Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Manufacturing Stream. We have a really fun episode this week. We are joined by Willemijn Schneyder. She is our resident product expert, frontline advocate, general tech and manufacturing tech wizard. And we thought it would be really cool to sit down and discuss the most recent research report that we just launched. So we just put out the 2025 Manufacturing Skills Report, where we surveyed, I believe it was 600 plus manufacturing employees from across the industry and asked their opinion and their take on a number of questions regarding manufacturing skills. Before we dive into that, Willemijn, I'm going to give you a brief second to introduce yourself and also tell me what your favorite color is.
Okay. Obviously, that's green.
Obviously green, of course.
Obviously green. So I think you've done a wonderful job introducing me. I wonder, every time you introduce me, it starts getting longer. Maybe we should start cutting it back.
It does. I should probably scale it back eventually.
But to everyone else who hasn't, if you've never met me before, my name is Willemijn Schneyder. I'm the head of strategy and product within L2L. I'm most passionate about how do we solve practical problems for frontline operators and leaders with simple to use technologies that actually make sense and actually solve problems. And that's what I love talking about today. I was kind of joking around, but hey, that color of green that I once had in my hair, that's definitely still my favorite color.
So for those of you who don't know, and Willemijn and I go back a long ways, and we actually dyed our hair green together.
Yep.
Back in the days before L2L. So there was a couple week overlap where Willemijn and I had the same green hair
color
that I think we corrected that pretty quickly on both of our ends. I don't think it lasted very long.
No, it didn't. I still want to know what you did with your hair because it was COVID and the hairdressers shut down. I know how I solved it. Like I took it in my own hand and just shaved it all off.
I actually had our colleague and current head of customer success, Tim Rijke, decided to give me a haircut that was so bad that I buzzed my head the next day.
Okay. All right. Okay. So we solved it the same way.
Absolutely. So the Manufacturing Skills Report, this is a really cool artifact. And I really like that we do these because so much of our information and data in this industry, I feel like comes from the big consulting powerhouses, right? It comes from the Deloittes, the Gartners, and of the world. And I think that's fantastic, but it's really cool to get some of these smaller scale reports where it feels much more organic, much more boots on the ground, and I think we get to talk to a really cool section of people. I'm looking at the demographics here in the report. I don't know if you have this up on your screen as well. For one, I think the age spread is really interesting. 55% of these people are coming in at ages 29 to 44 in this report, which I think makes sense. But I also saw that 14% of the respondents are coming in at ages 18 to 28, which I guess sounds young to me, but as the more I think about that, it tells me that, wow, like the next generation, the Gen Zs of the world really are moving into the manufacturing space, right? Yeah,
absolutely.
And I think that has a big impact on a lot of the skills things that we're seeing, whether it comes to how we're training people or how we're giving people access to things, or even the way that we're presenting manufacturing careers to the next generation. I think there's a big impact on that. I think it's not an accident that the bulk of this manufacturing workforce lies within one generation, that we're seeing this 55% of people who responded to this report are within this small section. So I think that's very interesting to see. So you all can, of course, find this research report on our website, but we wanted to try something a little bit new. We have been talking about manufacturing labor statistics and these things for years. However, as I was going through this, I found a number of things shocking, surprising. There were a number of revelations that came out of this skills research report that absolutely blew my mind. So I thought it would be fun to get someone here who's certainly no stranger to manufacturing data and the skills issues in manufacturing and see if I can shock her with some of the statistics that we pull from the report, because there is some incredible stuff in here, and I think it starts to describe and define a lot of the skills gaps and a lot of the issues that we're seeing in manufacturing. So the first one, and we're going to put this up on the screen in post. Don't worry, Willemijn, you can visualize this. The first statistic that I had is 81% of these 600 people that we surveyed said that they are at least somewhat prepared for AI and automation in their daily lives, in their manufacturing workflow. How do you feel about that? That's 81% of people said that they're at least somewhat ready to welcome this into their life.
So my gut response to this was, that's so much higher than I expected. But then when you just talked about the age reflection in the research group, it actually isn't a surprise at all, right? So if you think about the rise of the younger generation, 18 to what did the gap go? 18 to 24, and then 24 to 55. Again,
it's 18 to 28 actually.
18 to 28, right? And then 28 probably to 48 something.
44, yeah.
It's not a surprise at all. Most of this group has been slowly introduced to AI over the past couple of years, as AI in itself has been mass marketed through different applications. So my gut reaction is, it's surprising and it's not surprising at all. So while it's positive that these people, like our audiences, feel prepared, I think it boosts confidence. It'll increase the rate of adoption of AI. At the same time, I wonder, what level of preparedness do they feel, right? Is it around, is it in general understanding what AI does? Do they also understand it with response to specific skills, right? Or, technical skills, soft skills. So maybe that's something we want to explore.
Yeah, definitely. And that was one of my questions for you as a follow-up here is, when we talk about the manufacturing industry, right? This monolithic thing, what does it mean to be prepared for AI and automation? And I'm kind of asking this a little bit too broad on purpose, because I think that gets at the broadness of this question, right? What does it mean to be prepared to incorporate AI and automation into an entire industry?
Wow. Into an entire industry. Let's look at it from a manufacturing operations perspective, right? I think, first of all, this has to be unpacked in so many different layers. You can think about from the frontline workforce perspective, from the IT landscape perspective, security, operational technologies. So let's think about it first of all through the lens of the frontline workforce, right? Because that's what we talk about here. Is okay. The preparedness level, I think, at the first and foremost, is one of culture and communication. We should always lead with that. That talks about helping your workforce understand what the rising role of AI is going to mean for the jobs that they have, because that's everyone's top number one concern and priority is, okay, so is it a threat or isn't it a threat? And I think we have to be clear on that. It is not a threat, right? The artificial intelligence are systems that can help you improve and augment the skills that you have. It can play the role of a training buddy. It can play the role of a research buddy. It can play the role of like diagnostics buddy. Like as a technician, you'll always need to get to the root cause of the issue, and then you need to figure out what's the problem and how do I solve that. AI can help you get there faster. And it can help you develop skills and get you the guidance to help you close out an issue much faster than you were able to do before. Basically, it's like protein powder when you go to the gym. It helps you perform. And that's an analogy I like to use. See you smiling. You got some gym experience here?
No, not at all.
Not at all.
So here's, go ahead.
Oh, okay, I'll leave it at that. We can hop on and off from there.
I have an interesting question that actually just popped into my mind. And do you think that this response, this 81% is prepared for AI and automation to enter with the workforce? Do you think that would have been as high a year ago when ChatGPT and these really kind of groundbreaking large language models first hit the market? Do you think that this acceptance and readiness would have been so high, or do you think that people in the past, year and a half have kind of seen the realities of how AI is going to be used in the workforce, and maybe come to terms with the fact that, hey, this isn't going to take my job?
So, yeah, I think I have can give you some answer to that. We have been doing some like interviews and podcasts in the
Hmm.
last 8 years on the topic, and the rise of artificial intelligence isn't new, right?
Yeah.
Definitely for the last 2 decades, we know that we first introduced large language models to learn and be able to aggregate different insights from data. Then we layer in, let's say, sort of a knowledge AI. You can query that data, get the smarter insights. And that's all before the mass deployment of these models like ChatGPT or Gemini or what all these things.
Hmm.
The conversation topic then was much more focused around, is it going to take my job? What does it do? So there wasn't a broader acceptance of it
Hmm.
just yet. Because we now have so many different tools that are AI powered, people are experiencing in normal layers of their life, when they order food to how they do their banking,
Yeah.
to what they buy online, even clothes, what different what operationalizations of AI do. And in general, we see a mass adoption of, how do I augment people just to be better at what they do? So I think that has decreased the sense of like angst around introduction of
Yeah.
AI. And then second, the generation that has entered the workforce, 18 to 28, and I think 18 to roughly 35, they have been working on these concepts for a really long time. And we're now seeing that these people are becoming into positions of leadership where they can start driving the agenda and the priorities. So I think that has changed the mindset. So
Yeah.
mindset change is one area. Then we talked about what's an actual level of preparedness, right? So positive mindset is good. I think industry-wide, like global adoption of AI has been working. I mean, I'll just tap from a personal experience. I was talking to my brother about, I think it was about boat maintenance. He bought a sailing boat, and he runs a waste management plant and is responsible for all the maintenance and the technicians. And I see him pulling up an AI and goes like, he Googles it through the AI, gets the answers, then verifies it with his own knowledge, and it took him a lot like time less. And I hadn't thought that he would be like tuning into that kind of an AI. When I had the conversation with him and said, so how would how would it benefit you if you had that same kind of interface, but then for your technician group? And it hadn't crossed his mind, but then he says, yo, that would make a huge difference. So driving that conversation, one thing, then it's about understanding AI and automation. Like, what can it actually do? How does it work? What's the operational technology infrastructure we need to build? What are the essential skills we need to train on? Data literacy is a very important thing. I don't think we have awareness on that yet. Data literacy. Don't
Yeah.
think we have awareness yet on the technical skills you need to drive, right? Upskill on to be able to cross-skill engineers and operators and technicians, to be able to go through more complex procedures at the hands of an AI. Then there's things that come up in the report, cognitive, like critical thinking, problem solving, communication skills. So there's awareness of what it can do. I don't think there's enough awareness of what it takes to become successful.
Yeah. I think that's a really good point. It's we understand the building blocks of it, but we haven't quite yet fine-tuned the implementation of it and how to roll that out at scale and actually, successfully start to improve people's lives. I'm going to pitch another 3 numbers to you as kind of a package deal, and this is still in the subject of AI in the manufacturing industry. 75% of our respondents say that AI is going to simplify and accelerate their processes. 73% say it will improve predictive analytics, and 64% say that it will enhance digital record keeping. Now, how do you feel about those numbers, keeping in mind that the bulk of these responders are working in operational roles on the shop floor? These are not people who are necessarily in leadership. 44% of these respondents are production and operations people on the shop floor.
I align with that. If I look at the audience, as you said, it's almost 50% of the respondents come from production operations. If I see what we're already putting out there, it is about simplification, acceleration of processes. One, simplify, 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 right? That's what we're all about, especially when it comes to our tools. Yeah. The simplification will come from reducing the cognitive load. You don't need to go and find the information. It'll be served up to you. You don't need to go and do the analysis yourselves. The root cause analysis options will be presented to you. Based upon that, systems can look at historical data, but also historical fixes and the outcome of those historical fixes. For example, when a line is down, what are all the historical fixes that we tried? What was the success rate of those? And based on that, what are the 1-2 top recommendations for a fix that we can now deliver to get the line going again? That is simplification. It also speeds up the time to close out on a downtime. So I can get behind. Also, when you look at the deployment of AI tools, the easier wins for organizations is to take away manual processes. Creating a checklist, right, takes time, takes up to maybe an hour. If you can have the AI do that for you in 5 minutes and you take another 10 minutes to edit and get the fixes in, hey, you've got 45 minutes saved. Yeah. If you can take a currently probably lives in Excel, standard operating procedure, you can upload it to a tool system and it instantly digitizes it for you. That's about simplification and acceleration of processes. Then because you're getting it out of tacit knowledge environment, right? Everything that goes on between you and I or between people at the line is static. It's untraceable. So as soon as you have that in any digital format, all the data collection that it does will help improve your data model and get you to a more predictive environment. I'm super optimistic about this. I'm excited to see 73% of our respondents say it will improve predictive analytics. I fully can get behind this. I do think it'll take us time to get to iron out all the little wrinkles in our data models, right? To make sure it's not just a line in a site, but how do you do cross-plant standardization of data capture? Because right now it still resides within the four walls of a plant. And what manufacturers need to think about is, how do I unlock it from those four walls? How do I capture data in a way that we can standardize across machines, across lines, across sites? And then on the last comment, yes, it will enhance digital record keeping. I think that's like a natural result from everything else that you've seen. Yeah.
So, and the reason I brought these up is we're framing this entire skills report as, what are people going to need to learn in the next 10 years? What are people going to need to learn in the next 1 year, in the next 6 months to keep pace? We see these incredible skills gaps popping up, right? And 50% of roles going unfilled, open roles going unfilled today.
Was it 3.8 million in the next
it's
years?
This absolutely bonkers, incredible number. So in light of all of these skills gaps and in light of all of these new things that are going to be needed to be learned and taught to the frontline workforce, these statistics, as well as the 81% from before, were a little bit surprising to me. I was amazed at how general the consensus is that these things work to simplify and to improve processes. It seems like it's a pretty open secret out there that these things are going to improve daily life on the manufacturing floor, not just from senior VPs, not just from a leadership perspective, but
From the operations.
from the operator perspective.
Yeah.
And that's why I wanted to share these stats before we jumped into maybe some of the less fun and less glamorous statistics from this research report, was to kind of establish this fact that people are ready for this and people are out there acknowledging the value of implementing AI, of implementing these things to speed up and simplify processes. So I'm going to jump over to another set of statistics. I'll cherry pick a couple of them to you that I think were shocking to me, and I want to hear your take on them. Only 47% of these 600 people surveyed are using real-time analytics tools in their operation. That's not AI-driven analytics tools. That's real-time analytics tools. That's less than half of these manufacturers are implementing real-time analytics. And when you start to break into the AI side of things, we're at 27% use generative AI tools, and only 22% of people are using AI-driven decision-making tools, right? So
yes. And here's where you see the gap between thinking you're prepared, being prepared, and doing it, right? Yeah. So I think it's still relatively new. People are still getting used to it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a lot of those things are rollout based, right? When we're talking about AI at the very least. I'm not necessarily shocked that around 30% are using generative AI tools. Those are new. We acknowledge the fact that those will make a difference in your frontline. People see that, but this is an industry that's traditionally a little bit slower to implement things, right? However, what really shocks me is that real-time analytics software has been available that's not something that's come to fruition in the last year or two. That has been on the market for a very, very long time. I was blown away by the fact that less than half are using real-time analytics, because we've seen the impact that kind of implementation can have. I just thought that was incredible.
Yeah, and I think that if you look at real-time analytics, one of the points you're making is it's like a deployment implementation process. Yes, and at the same time, I think what we need to underscore is part of the manufacturing industry is still moving from on-prem to cloud. Right, so we're talking about real-time analytics being slow because our heads are already in predictive analytics and AI-based diagnostic tools. I think there's, next to deployment and implementation time, there is a skills gap. If you look at across the board, across the digital maturity of sites, I think that what you see reflected is roughly about a third of those sites have a level of digital maturity in the infrastructure to be able to move to these cloud-based tools and get real-time analytics. When you think about real-time analytics, you also need to take into account that you have to sometimes retrofit machines and lines to get data out and into the cloud. And that, as you said, just takes time. It also takes skills from a skills gap environment. Some manufacturers may be hesitant to implement it because their workers lack the ability to effectively use and interpret the data. So again, that goes to technical skills and data literacy. I think so that is some of the foundational issues that may still be behind that. What is encouraging to see is that the number is up from last year, and it's higher than I think I saw 5 years ago when we did this. It's up from like 10% to over a third of the base.
That is incredible, and that is growth. I think it might be time to crack into the skills gap. We've done this kind of inside out, right? We've talked about new tech and solutions to make life on the shop floor easier. But why is it so dang important to make life on the shop floor easier? Well, like we touched on earlier, we're seeing an incredible lack of the appropriate skills in the manufacturing industry right now. That statistic, I'll flash it on the screen one more time. That's 50% of open roles remain vacant due to a lack of skilled candidates. These are unfilled jobs, and the only reason they're unfilled is that they can't get people to fill them, and which I think is remarkable, especially in the modern economy where people want jobs. Things are expensive. People want to be able to work, right? And
Absolutely.
yeah, and 67% of manufacturing professionals have observed this growing skills gap, and I think that that number is low.
Yeah. Yep.
So what we talked about all this great AI and
Hmm.
automation and all of these great things that are going to simplify life on the shop floor. How do we specifically apply all of those great solutions that people seem to be so ready for? How do we apply that specifically to closing skills gaps?
Yeah. I think that's an awesome question. I want to take one step in between, and maybe you had
Hmm.
it planned for coming up later, but shocking that the number one skills gap is a communication skills gap.
Yeah,
That's
I
shocking,
saw
and it's
that.
not shocking at all, actually, right?
I
So
actually
the
had
number
that in my
one,
notes
yeah,
because that blew my mind.
okay. So that is,
55% of the
yes.
respondents cited missing communication skills as part of this skills gaps, which
And one
was
of the key
incredible.
driver to production delays, right? So I
Hmm.
think it's really important for manufacturers to recognize that and recognize that a communication skills gap requires leadership and change and cultural change in an organization. Then to tackle that second part of your question is what are really practical like solutions? If I look at the number 2 and 3 skills gaps, it's quality control and inspection, a critical skill for maintaining product standards, reducing waste. 43% of respondents identified technical troubleshooting as a skill that needs improvement. And then within the context of a modernized digital manufacturing environment. So how do you interpret data? How do you diagnose what's going on? And then how do you resolve technical issues? I think a very practical way for manufacturers to address that is to change how you provide training on the shop floor, right? We have to move away from these larger, outdated, role-based training programs. What we have to move into is specifically if you want to leverage people across different lines within a manufacturing environment, is to close the gap on 2 things. Make sure you provide real-time guidance that is as much data-driven as you can. So you provide the worker with the right task at the right time with the right guidance, right? If you build a technology that simplifies how people have to execute a task, then that helps you reduce the downtime within the environment. It
Yeah.
helps you improve how you do quality control. It helps you improve how you troubleshoot technically. The second part is moving to very practical skill-based training programs that are dynamic, that live within the environment that the worker already operates in the manufacturing environment and on their tablets. So
Yeah.
use technology to do so. Make sure you drive very practical, skilled, task-focused training so that you can instantly leverage, as a manufacturer, you can instantly leverage that outcome. I'm trained for this specific task. Now I can do this task at this machine, that machine, and the next machine. And I think that is a very important factor. When you look at the when you look at the level that the frontline workforce enters the workforce with now, they're still being trained for very specific roles. And I think it's the task of the manufacturer to say, we are going to bring everybody into a skill-based program and train you within the flow of work as you're executing it, right? And I think that's makes it very tangible for people to see what they're working on and what they're training for. And if you bring it within their personal like digital environments and help them see their pathways throughout the different like skills and different roles in the factory, that also entices them to make that time investment.
I'm looking at that statistic here about inadequate training. Like, so they surveyed these people and they asked what's fueling this skills gap, and 58% cited inadequate training, right? That's what you just talked about. But I think another part of it could be we need to redefine what inadequate means in terms of training, is what you're getting at, is that it doesn't just mean that they're not trained for long enough or they're not
It's how they're
given
trained. It's what they're trained
exactly.
with. It's
And
Yep.
if they're trained in a way that makes sense to a modern person
Correct.
who's
Yeah.
used to, I don't know, doing their grocery list on a cell phone instead of, I don't know, walking across a shop floor to a binder and finding it there.
Same. Yeah. So the report also says training programs aren't role specific enough. I'd like to
Yeah.
scratch that and say training programs aren't skill based, right? You need to understand what people want is to understand how what they do in the day to day directly ties into where they can go, their personal career paths. And that at the same time, what is different than years ago is because we have technology that constantly allows us to communicate and be connected and meaningful to each other, we've created an environment in which people want to see what the impact is of what they contribute.
Yep.
I'm not simply going to go to a job and say, I'm here to do this machine and that's it. You want to have an impact,
Yeah.
consciously or subconsciously. If feedback is being asked of you, you want to know what we do with it. If we ask you to do something, you want to see how it's been impacting other people or how it's impacting the business. So that that close loop feedback that we've been talking about, those are elements that make it up to date. It isn't just about being trained, having updated information. It's the entire engagement model for skills development should be different.
Yeah. And that engagement keeps people around, right? The skills gap is also partially fueled by turnover, right? And engagement. And are people satisfied working in the place that they're currently working? And I think the resounding answer is no, not really.
No,
And
not
so
really.
we know that this investment in people and in their skills and in their abilities works, right? It engages them. It makes them better employees. It keeps them in their jobs. It reduces errors and deficits and all of these expensive bad things that manufacturers want to avoid. And the bombshell statistic for me of this entire report, the one that blows my mind, is that 48% of manufacturing professionals surveyed say that their companies offer upskilling programs.
Mm-hmm.
That's just offer upskilling. Less than half.
Less than half. Yeah. Mind blowing that the metric still exists in 2025. That you can enter a company that doesn't have any type of personal development program in place whatsoever.
Because
It's shocking.
I've spent this whole episode up to this point kind of leading into this, right? People are ready for the tech. People are ready for new solutions. People are ready for new skills. We acknowledge that training is kind of bad and doesn't work the way it needs to be to keep people in, and yet less than half are even engaged in upskilling initiatives, which I think is remarkable.
Yep. I think that a lot of manufacturers are just under day-to-day stressors of profitably meeting demand, getting out the next order, making sure that they fill out the next shift. So sometimes when you just look at human nature, that pressure in the business can flow over into personal overwhelm, in maybe oversight. If I would go glass half full, go positive approach, I'd say this is good wake-up call for manufacturers. Yeah. If they read this report, if they hear the show, is to wake up and say, in 2025, it's no longer that's never been okay, and in 2025, it certainly isn't. If you want to close the skills gap, if you profitably want to meet demand, if you want to fill your next shift, if you want people to continue to work with you, change the way, redefine what personal development in your manufacturing operations looks like.
Yeah.
Think about how can you bring learning on the job, learning by doing. How can you eliminate tacit knowledge from your manufacturing floor? It's a huge waste, and it's a drain on your operation. How can you make sure that you enhance real-time problem solving? How can you drive critical analytical skill sets? Those are things that are beneficial for you as a manufacturer to profit. I said it for the third time and now I struggled. Profitably meet demand. And it's an investment in your people, and people will invest back in you through loyalty, right? It prevents turnover.
We've talked about that probably for the last 3 or 4 weeks on this podcast, especially with Jim Mayer. It's just is recreating that sense of pride for people too, and giving them the skills to do a job that they are proud of, and to make them feel in charge of their own life and their own skills and their own career. It only brings benefit
for both. It pays back in reduced downtime, increased safety and profitability for the manufacturer. It pays you back in increased retention rates, and for you as an employee, it's an investment in you. And those investments, specifically if you bring it more to a skill-based definition, is going to help you in your next step in your career. Demonstrable skills that are repetitive and are with an ability to skill that across different like machine types or different kinds of operation types.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think it's probably time to wind down, unless you had anything else in this report that really caught your eye or that you wanted to bring to our attention. I hit all my major points. I still think it's remarkable. My final piece is I'm still hooked on this communication skills being listed so highly there. I think we actually have a podcast in the works right now about soft and hard skills in manufacturing.
So that was my question. My question was, when are you going to do a podcast on improving, like, what does it take to close the communication skills gap? That's one I'd love to listen to.
Yeah, we've been talking a lot about soft skills, actually completely unrelated to this report. And so having this conversation for the last couple of months, and then seeing this number of 55% people say that they're missing communication skills is pretty remarkable. And I think it's going to be really interesting over the next 1 to 5 years to see how communication skills also change, right? We're talking about adapting to new tech. Well, we're going to need to communicate in a different way, right? We're going to need to answer different questions and to use different mediums, I think, to actually do this communication. So, I think there's a whole generation of people maybe leaving the industry who will have to learn to communicate digitally more effectively.
Okay, well, I look forward to that one and engage
it's going to be great
discussion about closing communication skills gap.
We can have you topic. On. You can come join us. We're always looking for more people to come on the pod and talk about this kind of stuff. So I think it's time to end. Once again, thank you so much for your insights, Willemijn. Thanks for taking a look at this new research report with me. This was an absolute pleasure. So really appreciate having you on here. I do want to say that the 2025 Manufacturing Skills Report is live on our website. If you go on to just our main homepage, l2l.com, you can go ahead and see the link to download it in there's going to be a banner that pops up on your screen. Go ahead, click that, download it, take a look at the report for yourself. There's so many statistics in here that we didn't discuss yet. And I think it does a really good job kind of painting a picture and kind of building up why this stuff is going down the way it is. And also kind of gets into a database idea of what we can do to start fixing it. So it's a really cool piece of content. Look out for stuff coming out on LinkedIn. Look out for this podcast. And once again, thank you so much for tuning in to Manufacturing Stream. I'm Chris, and I'll see you next time.
Thanks, Chris. Bye.